Today, I'm going to share with you some quick wins for the LSAT. For logical reasoning, you want to focus on the most common LSAT question types. In logical reasoning, for example, we're talking about knowing the difference between necessary assumption and sufficient assumption questions, knowing how to handle inference questions and flaw questions. These are the most common types of questions you'll see on logical reasoning, so I don't know why you would spend any time focusing on the rare question types that hardly ever show up, since every question is worth the same. And I can't tell you how many students come to me a week before the exam not knowing the difference between necessary assumption questions and sufficient assumption questions. There are even some LSAT prep companies that lump them together under the catch-all category of assumption, which to me is crazy because they are completely different question types requiring different approaches. So if that's the case for you, make sure that you are crystal clear on this before doing anything else, especially before going into rare types like evaluate the argument or tougher types like parallel and parallel flaw. Now in reading comp, you want to focus on getting the main idea down first and foremost. Don't spend time on the inferential questions that require a bit more reading between the lines when you haven't even knocked out these general global main idea questions. So anything that asks you, what is the main idea of the passage? What is the primary purpose? What is the author's opinion? The best title, the tone? Knock those out first and foremost, because if you don't know the main idea, you don't know anything. Start there, then move on to the more detail-oriented questions, and finally, the tougher ones that you want to save for last. Now, I find a lot of students get really mired in note-taking. They get bogged down in the passage, and they don't have enough time for the questions. So all else being equal, I'm going to assume that's the case for you as well. Spend less time on the passage up front and more time on the questions. To give you a general benchmark here, I recommend roughly 2.5 to 3 minutes on your initial read of the passage, assuming that you have standard timing. Then save up the rest of your time for the questions associated, because already, if you spend 3 minutes on reading the passage and you've got an average of 8:45 for the passage and questions altogether, you already have less than a minute per question. You don't want to go any lower than that. So again, 2.5 to 3 minutes on the initial read, then knock out the global questions first, saving the others for after the fact. Now, if you are taking the LSAT with logic games in June, I'd recommend, all else being equal, spend more time making inferences up front. I find the typical student likes to jump right into the questions and doesn't take enough time to say, what are the big picture inferences I can make by connecting the rules together? Of course, LSAC is not looking for you to brute force the games. They want to make sure that you have the ability to derive inferences. And so start there, see what connections you can make between the rules. The other thing I see students doing is approaching questions in order. Just like in reading comp, they're doing them in order when in reality, there is a strategic order you can take. Just like in reading comp, you want to do the global main idea questions first. In logic games, you want to do the orientation question first. That's your warm up. Then also do the local questions first in games. So in reading comp, you want to do global first. In games, you want to do local first. The reason you want to do local first in logic games is because they give you a jumping off point with that if statement for you to make a local hypothetical scenario. The more of these that you have going into your general global questions, the easier those questions will be, because you already have a bank of hypothetical scenarios to draw upon to help you solve those general global questions. So to recap here, logical reasoning, focus on the most common question types first, like necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. Make sure that you know the difference between necessary assumption and sufficient assumption questions. For reading comp, get the main idea down first and foremost. And for logic games, make more inferences up front and approach the questions out of order, doing local first, then global. If you found the video helpful, you can check out the link below the video to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.